Good day, I'm Andrea Chizom and this is your JIS News for Thursday, March 26. Government is to set up an energy stabilization fund to receive and manage the money from the oil hedge program. It will protect against any sharp increases to international oil prices and the potential negative consequences for Jamaica's economy.
These resources include the proceeds from a portion of the additional $7 per litre of specific STC, specifically $5 per litre, as well as any future payments from the hedge contract should future oil price movements lead to such payments.
The finance minister, who was closing the budget debate in Parliament on Wednesday, added that the money for the Energy Stabilization Fund would go into a dedicated sub-account in the Bank of Jamaica. It will be managed by the Development Bank of Jamaica in conjunction with the Finance Ministry. The Finance Minister also told Parliament that a ministry paper to be tabled soon would outline governance arrangements for the Energy Stabilization Fund, including its reporting and transparency arrangements.
We also intend to bring legislation in the not-too-distant future, which will establish in a binding and transparent way the energy stabilization purposes for which these resources may be utilized.
Meanwhile, CEO of the private sector organization of Jamaica, Dennis Chung, is commending the government's fiscal legislative reforms. Mr. Chung was speaking during a special JIS post-budget panel discussion Wednesday. He said the fiscal legislative reforms have helped to reduce the country's inflation rate.
What we're seeing now, which is positive, is that we're actually now stabilizing the macro environment with a reduced debt to GDP ratio. In previous years, what we've done is, and this from the 70s coming up, what we've done is stabilize the macro with an increased debt to GDP ratio. And that's a difference.
As part of the economic reform program, government has developed fiscal rules to limit the annual fiscal deficit to reduce the public debt to no more than 60% of gross domestic product by 2025-2026. Public sector wage negotiations for the 2015-2017 contract period formally began today at the Ministry of Finance and Planning. The negotiations were led by Minister with responsibility for the public service Horace Daly and the Chief Technical Negotiating Team representing the Jamaica Confederation of Trade Unions JCTU. That negotiating team is led by JCTU Vice President Helene Davis White. Approximately 37 bargaining units will be negotiating with the government during this period. Prime Minister Portia Simpson Miller is urging peoples of the world to band together to end all forms of modern-day slavery. The Prime Minister made the call as she unveiled the permanent memorial to honor the victims of slavery and the transatlantic slave trade in a ceremony held at the United Nations headquarters in New York on Wednesday.
And I want to mention particularly child labor and human trafficking. This must stop. May we use this memorial to say no to all forms of racism, discrimination, and intolerance, and maintain the fight to end racial discrimination and injustice wherever in the world they exist.
Following the unveiling of the monument, Mrs. Simpson Miller participated in a UN General Assembly plenary meeting to commemorate the March 25 International Day of Remembrance of the Victims of Slavery and the Transatlantic Slave Trade. Mrs. Simpson Miller is also engaging members of the Jamaican diaspora at a town hall meeting. And finally, the 2015 Grade 6 Achievement Test GSAT got off to a smooth start all across the island this morning. The Education Ministry says although there was residual smoke at schools in the vicinity of the Riverton City disposal site in St. Andrew, students and teachers said it was manageable and would not affect the holding of the exam. The ministry had pushed back the start time by a half hour to 9:30 a.m. to limit students' exposure to the smog. Meanwhile, it was previously revealed that the 38,407 students registered to take the test will see some changes in this year's GSAT content for which students had been preparing for the past 2 years.
The changes had to do with the reduction of the number of items for social studies, which of course would have been as a result of some of the areas being removed from the social studies curriculum from grade 4 to 6, as well as the reduction in the science content, but that did not affect the number of items for the exam.
And that's it for GIS News today. I'm Andrea Chisholm. Thank you for watching.